One of the most powerful figures in Formula One might be closer to a comeback than anyone expected. And what's starting to surface behind the scenes is genuinely sending shockwaves through the paddock. Christian Horner, the architect of Red Bull's era of dominance, the man who oversaw 8 drivers' titles and multiple constructors' championships, is suddenly being linked to a move that would shake the sport to its core. Ferrari. And the timing of this couldn't be more explosive. This isn't just another paddock rumor that fades away after a few headlines. This is a scenario that insiders are taking seriously. Because Ferrari are desperate, Horner is available, and Formula One is entering a moment of total reset. What makes this even more dramatic is who this potential move could directly impact. Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion who has just come off the most difficult season of his entire career. No podiums, beaten convincingly by his teammate, openly frustrated, and now being told, quietly but persistently, that Christian Horner could be the key to reviving both Ferrari's championship hopes and Hamilton's fading dream of an 8th title. When names like that start being mentioned together, you know something big is brewing. This is exactly why you don't want to miss what happens next. Because if this story develops the way many in the paddock believe it might, it could completely rewrite the power structure of Formula One. So make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and help us push toward 2,000 subscribers, because stories like this don't come around often, and they evolve fast. And while you're here, let me ask you something. When you first heard Christian Horner's name linked with Ferrari, did you think it sounded realistic, or did it feel impossible? Drop that in the comments, because fan opinion on this is already split right down the middle. Ferrari have spent years chasing the ghost of their Schumacher-era glory, cycling through leadership, promising rebuilds, and delivering the same disappointment. Horner represents the exact opposite of that chaos. He represents structure, authority, and a proven winning culture. And when someone like Lewis Hamilton is struggling the way he is right now, suddenly the idea of a ruthless, championship-tested leader starts to feel less like fantasy and more like necessity. But to understand why this potential move matters so much, you have to look closely at where Hamilton actually is right now, mentally and competitively, because his situation at Ferrari is far more serious than most people want to admit. That's where this story really starts to get uncomfortable. When you strip away the reputation, the records, and the legacy, what Lewis Hamilton just went through was something we've never really seen from him before. By his own admission, this was the worst season of his career. No podiums, not one. For a driver who spent 2 decades measuring success in wins and championships, that statistic alone tells you how deep the struggle ran. And what makes it even more brutal is that this wasn't a case of Ferrari being completely uncompetitive. Because right across the garage, Charles Leclerc was still finding ways to get results. That contrast is what really cuts. Hamilton wasn't just losing time to the front runners. He was watching his teammate extract performances from the same car that he simply couldn't. Race after race, the gap wasn't just on the timing. Screens. It was visible in body language, radio messages, and post-race interviews. This wasn't frustration with bad luck. This was a champion questioning himself in real time. And that's something Formula One fans are not used to seeing. Johnny Herbert's comments only reinforced what many people were already noticing. Hamilton looked grumpy, irritated, mentally worn down. Not angry in a fiery, motivated way, but drained by the reality that the fairy tale Ferrari move hadn't delivered what he hoped. And when you're someone whose entire career has been built on being the benchmark, being beaten consistently by your teammate hits harder than any bad result ever could. If you've raced or competed at any level, you already know that pain. So let me ask you directly, do you think Lewis's problems are more about the car or more about what's happening in his head right now? Let me know in the comments, because this is where opinions really start to divide. What's important here is that, despite everything, nobody credible believes Hamilton has lost his desire. If he had, he wouldn't still be here. He wouldn't be committing to another season. He wouldn't be talking about unfinished business. The fire is still there. The question is whether Ferrari can give him a reason to believe again. Because talent doesn't disappear overnight, but confidence can. And rebuilding confidence at 40 years old, against the fastest generation Formula One has ever seen, is a completely different challenge. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, make sure you like the video and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow toward 2,000 subscribers. And it tells me you want more honest, no-nonsense F1 analysis like this. Because the next part of this story isn't just about Hamilton's struggles. It's about why 2026 might be his last real shot at changing how this entire chapter of his career is remembered. By committing to stay, Lewis Hamilton has made it clear that he's not ready to let his story end like this. The focus is now fully on 2026, and there's a reason so many people inside Formula One keep pointing to that season as the ultimate reset button. New regulations are coming, the competitive order could shift dramatically, and for the first time in years, every team will be starting from a cleaner slate. For Hamilton, this isn't just another season. It's potentially the final window where everything could finally align. Ferrari know this too, which is why the pressure on them is enormous. We've heard this story before. Big promises, talk of rebuilding, hints that next year will be different. And then the season starts, and the reality never quite matches the expectation. That pattern has haunted Ferrari for years, and it's exactly why so many fans are skeptical when they talk about 2026 being the turning point. Trust has been eroded over time, not lost overnight. So let me ask you this. Do you genuinely believe Ferrari will get the 2026 car right? Or are we heading toward another false dawn? Drop a yes or no in the comments, and let's see where everyone stands. There's also an uncomfortable reality sitting just beneath the surface. Frederic Vasseur recently signed a contract extension, but even inside the paddock, there are whispers that Ferrari may have moved too quickly. Before that extension was announced, another name was circulating heavily: Christian Horner, a proven leader who understands how to build championship-winning structures, not just fast cars. Ferrari didn't choose him then, but that doesn't mean the door is permanently closed. If Ferrari stumble again at the start of this new regulation cycle, patience will wear thin fast. And when that happens, leadership always comes under scrutiny. The margins are so fine, the expectations so high, that one more disappointing start could trigger changes nobody expected. That's why Horner's availability matters so much right now. Timing is everything in Formula One, and the timing here is starting to look uncomfortably perfect. If you're following this closely, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on, because situations like this can shift quickly once the season gets underway. And don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying the discussion so far. It really helps us move closer to that 2,000 subscriber goal, because coming up next, we're getting into why Christian Horner isn't just a name being thrown around, but someone who could genuinely represent Ferrari's best chance at a Schumacher-era style reset. When people talk about Christian Horner as a potential solution for Ferrari, they're not just talking about trophies. They're talking about something Ferrari have been missing for a very long time: a clear, ruthless winning culture. Horner didn't just oversee success at Red Bull, he engineered it. He built an environment where everyone knew exactly who was in charge, what the goal was, and how success was measured. That's the part that keeps coming up when insiders compare this situation to Ferrari's Schumacher era. Back then, Ferrari weren't just fast, they were unified. Every department was aligned, every decision had a purpose, and there was absolute trust in the leadership. Since then, Ferrari have chased that feeling without ever quite recapturing it. Too many voices, too many compromises, too many seasons that start with optimism and end with questions. Horner represents the opposite of that uncertainty. He attracts top-level talent. He commands authority. And most importantly, he knows how to turn pressure into performance rather than panic. Johnny Herbert's comparison to the Schumacher years wasn't accidental. The suggestion is that Ferrari don't just need better strategy calls or marginal gains. They need someone who can reshape the entire organization from the top down. Someone who can say no when needed, protect the drivers when necessary, and demand accountability across the board. Horner has done that before, and he's done it under relentless scrutiny. Of course, there's a massive question sitting in the middle of all this: Lewis Hamilton. Their history isn't exactly simple. Years of fierce competition, political tension, and high-stakes title fights don't just disappear overnight. So here's where I want your opinion. Do you think Hamilton and Horner could put the past aside and actually work together for a common goal? Or would their personalities eventually clash? Let me know in the comments, because this partnership would either be brilliant or explosive, with very little middle ground. Still, the potential upside is enormous. Imagine Ferrari finally committing to a clear direction, Hamilton feeling protected and believed in again, and a leadership structure that doesn't wobble at the first sign of pressure. That's why this idea refuses to go away. It's not just dramatic, it's logical. And yet, logic doesn't always win in Formula One. Because even if Horner is the right man, and even if Ferrari are brave enough to make that call, there's one more brutal factor that can't be ignored: time. And for Lewis Hamilton, time is no longer on his side. That's exactly what we need to talk about next. Time is the one opponent Lewis Hamilton can't outdrive, and that's what makes the next phase of his career so unforgiving. At 40 years old, he's facing a Formula One grid that is faster, younger, and more aggressive than ever. This isn't the same environment he dominated for years. Lando Norris has already proven he can win championships. Max Verstappen continues to operate at an extraordinary level. And behind them, an entire generation is lining up, hungry and fearless, with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The margins Hamilton is dealing with now are brutally thin. That's why 2026 feels so decisive. New regulations don't just offer opportunity, they remove excuses. If Ferrari get it right, Hamilton has one last genuine chance to rewrite the ending of his story. Not by relying on reputation or experience alone, but by proving he can adapt one final time and beat the very generation that's trying to replace him. If Ferrari get it wrong, though, there may not be another reset waiting around the corner. This is where the Horner question becomes impossible to ignore. Ferrari have to decide what matters more: loyalty to their current structure or the willingness to make a ruthless decision in pursuit of success. Hamilton didn't leave Mercedes to fade quietly into the Chitoitit midfield. He came to Ferrari to chase immortality. And if that dream is going to survive, everything around him has to be aligned perfectly. The car, the leadership, the mindset. One weak link could be enough to end it all. So now, it comes down to you. How do you see this playing out? Do you believe Lewis Hamilton still has one championship run left in him? Or Are we watching the final chapter of an incredible career unfold in slow motion? And should Ferrari make the bold move and bring in Christian Horner to try to save it all? Or would that only add more pressure to an already volatile situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those moments where Formula One history is genuinely at a crossroads. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us push toward 2,000 subscribers and keeps this kind of detailed F1 coverage coming. Big stories like this don't disappear, they evolve, and you won't want to miss what happens next.